This is the Astrology Show podcast with Jessica Adams.
Thanks, Shane. This is your Astrology and Tarot for the week starting February 17. And thanks for listening to the Astrology Show on Substack. Do you have Pisces factors? Well, Ceres, which is all about compromise, enters Pisces on Sunday, the 23rd of February. So this is about cutting a deal or reaching a compromise over religion, therapy, tarot, the spirituality side of your nature, self-help, counseling, the I Ching, mediumship, Buddhism, hypnosis, and dreams. This is now a major story for the second year in a row, and you are proceeding slowly but surely towards a sign-off. Your tarot card this week can be decoded at jessicaadams.com. Aries, the Hermit, Taurus, the Three of Cups, Gemini, the Emperor, Cancer, the World, Leo, the Four of Pentacles, Virgo, the Lovers, Libra, Temperance, Scorpio, the Devil, Sagittarius, the Empress, Capricorn, the Three of Wands, Aquarius, the Ace of Pentacles, and Pisces, the Ace of Wands. Aries, well, your mind, body, and spirit will be proceeding towards balance as Ceres enters Pisces, helping you to locate who you really are and what you really want and need on the inside. You'll need to be alone this week to do it. And you'll access this balance through meditation, dreams, religion, diaries, hypnosis, the tarot, psychic work, or your own preference. I used to work on a TV show called The Secret Life of Us in St Kilda about a tarot reader. This week is actually about the secret life of you. So the Pisces side of your life is a very big deal. From the last week of May this year, Saturn and Neptune go out of Pisces, and that is the end of a very long cycle for you regarding your soul, your spirit, or your psyche. This week, though, a deal is on the way as Ceres moves in. This may be the end of confusion for you as a medium, or confusion about people who say that they're getting spirit messages. It is the end coming of muddles over Buddhism, the Church of England, or even the situation in Gaza for some of you. It may be the end of a therapist or a counsellor who left you floundering. These things take time to sort out. Neptune is about the lack of boundaries. Saturn is about a waiting game and a test of patience for you, which ends in the final week of May. This may be the Church of England or being Jewish. Pisces does rule the two fish of the Christian church, but this necessarily means it rules all the alternatives to Christianity for you, be this therapy or your psychic side. If you don't pray, after all, then what do? I'm chatting to Zane Stein at the Astrology Collective soon about this endgame Pisces cycle, going into more detail for you if you're interested. Even though this part of your nature doesn't get much show or front in life, really over the last few years, the focus has been on your finances or property situation, given the massive changes that you've been through. It's also true that you have had to turn inside to make sense of what's going on in the outside world. And that's what this week is all about. Deciding how you are going to split the deal with yourself or maybe a confidant, like a priest or a therapist or a psychic, is part of the journey. But for most Aries people, this is about reaching some kind of trade-off with your own spirit, because you have been on a very long journey with this. It goes step by step, and this week is the first step. Taurus. April and May are just around the corner, and so is another relaunch for you. In fact, there may be two more relaunches of your appearance, title, profile, or image, and you won't stop just yet. This week, your mind will quite naturally turn to your appearance, how you're seen, and your public profile, maybe because your birthday is just around the corner. Uranus in Taurus, however, in your chart, suggests that you can tackle the issue of how you are seen in a more innovative way. In fact, this cycle, Uranus in Taurus, will be in its final stages from now until July, so there is one last push for freedom about yourself. You'll have a lot to think about this week where the world of me is concerned in April and May, and your chart suggests that you'll be doing some pre-planning. This can make what appeared to be a normal dental appointment or a stint at the hairdresser quite a liberating experience. Or maybe it's glasses. Maybe you already know this. Or seriously, you may be looking at a total relaunch, for example, substantial weight loss. The masks that you have been putting on since 2018, Taurus, and the masks that you have been taking off have set you free from that or this in your past. There is more of that this week. Uranus in Taurus is independence from or independence through something or someone. So quite commonly, it's about social media. It can be about Zoom and the boxes that you are putting on Zoom, except you do not want to be boxed in. Uranus is about being free and breaking free of certain aspects of the internet, for example, that make you feel confined or restricted is part of it. But beyond that, there is a question here this week about a few masks before you between 2018 and 2024 and what you need to shed or feel that is just no longer you. That's also part of the journey this week. Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini, your own sign, suggests that almost any procedure or purchase connected to your face, your body, your personal style, your name, or your brand could be so much more by June. And this extends to a book bearing your name, a website profiling you, personalised writing paper, a website, business cards, a scrapbook about yourself, or anything involving you that involves paper, pens, computers, or technology, depending on how tech you actually are. Your title on a business card is one thing, but a website is another. What you experience this week is stage 1, but there are several more steps until you end the cycle in June. Uranus in Gemini is big though. That's coming in July and it runs for many years. And it's the same sort of thing, framing yourself differently, being seen in a new light, being captured very differently is all in the pipeline. In fact, after July, you could say that the new framing of yourself is a revolution. It may be losing weight, gaining a new title for yourself, dropping baggage from your identity, liberating yourself from being seen as X or Y and the rest. This week tells you that there are some things about the future that are quite unknown regarding that, and that's quite true. Uranus tends to come in shockwaves, and you can never totally predict what's on the way. But if your spider senses tell you that this is not narcissism this week, and it's not ego, it's just timely intervention in your own destiny, then that's quite true. It is about you, and yet it's not all about you because, of course, it never is. But you do have to be a realist. Do you want letters after your name? Do you want a new profile? What are you gunning for? Because everything is possible this year. Cancer. The South Node in Virgo in your third house dominates the karma this week. Life as it was karmically 18, 19 years ago is playing its part with your cousin, brother, and or sister. Cancer, you should come up with results eventually with your sibling or cousin, no matter if you are organising a family matter or even tackling serious issues. What happens with the South Node is always like an old piece of music played differently. The third house of your solar chart, ruled by Virgo, has always ruled siblings and cousins right since childhood. Yet in your birth chart as well, Gemini rules this area of your life, and you do have major cycles in Gemini too. So this is working across both your public chart and your private chart. 2025 and 2026, for so many people, are about independence from siblings and cousins or independence through them. This week, the South Node in Virgo goes backwards through the signs, not forwards. And so this is about cycling back to the beginning, 18 or 19 years ago. It's Groundhog Day for, with or through a sibling or cousin. And what it achieves is a chance for you to change on the inside just to cope with the repetition. Just like Bill Murray's character in Groundhog Day, you may become aware of things never changing. So this makes you more philosophical, more cheerful, to make the most of what you know is coming next. For or involving a sibling or cousin, you have to make the changes within. And then when the cycle eventually ends, as it will, you will realise that, in a way, the repetition has done you a favour. It's quite true that a brother, for example, Prince William, is a Cancerian who has Prince Harry to deal with, can become at the centre of a really epic journey for you, depending on your natal chart. But even if your birth chart isn't that dramatic, there's still something here to sort out, because you are owed from 18 or 19 years ago, or on some level you may owe, and this week is about proceeding towards closure. Leo, you have Ceres in Pisces next after February 23, and compromises coming with finance, property, charity, business, and valuables. Deal making is on the way, and this is particularly true if you are selling them, her, or him something, lending money, or buying, borrowing, negotiating. Pisces rules the 8th house of your chart, very commonly about partnership and money and property, or family, property and money. There are variations on the theme, but it's usually about quite intense close relationships, whether it's his or her parents or yours, and so on. A 50-50 agreement may come out of this by March, and the month of May looks important, with the final week being a sign-off from a long period when it was very hard to find the ground beneath your feet. This week is about looking at the numbers involved with the property or money, but also the feelings. And it has to be like that if a partner is involved or a relative. Pisces rules your solar 8th house, and that's do or die relationships with partners and ex-partners. But it's also about the way that your parents, or perhaps his or hers, affect a story with others. The money, house, possessions, shares, charity or business, the apartment, is only as important as the feelings this week. And if you really spread the story out, you'll be looking at people whose names turn up in your own will or legacy, or any inheritance which names you. That's the bigger picture. A deal is coming, as I've mentioned. The feelings have to be separated from the facts. You are now on a road between here and the final week of May, when you realise you are going to sign off from years of a situation where there were no boundaries, where something may have been confused or confusing. Neptune going out of Pisces very soon means that boundaries are back, not just with the numbers or the assets or debts, the properties, but also with the people. Because a Pisces cycle in your chart is about those close relationships. You can't really step back from it too much before you get into the question of your own life budget. And that's where the focus is this week. Virgo. Ceres now enters Pisces, and your 7th house of marriage, divorce, separation, de facto relationships, and dating. It also affects work partnership. This cycle, which is about compromise and deal making, is also about platonic couples, pairs, duets, and duos of all kinds. And finally, any one against one situation, a conflict, a battle, or a feud. Now, as you're listening to this, you know immediately where the deal making is going to be. There is no point in drawing conclusions about your findings just yet, about the compromise coming, as it's still too early to call, but you can make mental notes on what you will and will not tolerate, because Ceres transits are very much about parking the emotions at the door. Unless the feelings are set to one side, it's impossible to get any kind of practical arrangement going. And that's pretty clear this week. Virgo, what you are waiting for, no matter if you are a widow or very much married, dealing with a feud, or just with the dating game, is the month of May. In the last week of May, both Saturn and Neptune are gone from Pisces, your opposite sign, and that's the end of a cycle. This week is preparation. You can see a deal with yourself, him or her, has to happen, and there will be a compromise. It may be 50-50, or it may be a variation of that. This is about carving up the turf or the territory with one eye on the long-term future, as you and he or she have been through this transit for such a long time. The seventh house of your chart, ruled by Pisces, your opposite sign, does see major endgames this year. The confusion disappears from March 30, with Neptune vanishing from Pisces, and then on May 23, Saturn is gone. So life will look and feel very different from the last week of May, when you realise that that was then and this is now, with or for this other person or the other side. Libra. Sirius in Pisces is now in your lifestyle, workload, and health zone. It is time to figure out a bargain or a compromise. This may be with yourself or with a key person relating to your health and well-being or your workload. It may be with your staff, your employer, for example, or a surgeon or naturopath. This week suggests a fact-finding mission about your health and well-being in the context of your work and being able to work, whether it's paid or not. And this goes well into March. A deal with yourself or a deal with him, her, them, or that is coming, but it takes time because it has to be something that you can live with. This deal is part of a really big sign-off from a chapter of your life, which may have been about your lifestyle, your mental or physical health, your paid work, unpaid work, or study. Under the circumstances, you may need to make crucial decisions from now until May, but the last week of May is the sign-off. All this action is happening in Pisces in your chart in the 6th house. If you are one of those Libran people who have Virgo factors in your birth chart, then you can double this message. But in any case, there's a compromise ahead where the power and the control with him, her, them, or just that must be sorted out in a new way, a way that works for both or all concerned. This week is prep time. It's about seeing how that might happen. Job sharing is one example, or a hybrid of working from home and working at the office. Maybe there is a 50-50 deal with your doctor over giving up alcohol, for example. Series is about the art of the deal, so understanding the way that she works in your chart is pretty helpful. And rule one is always that no matter how big the emotions are and the feelings already tend to be quite intense for you, it's important to understand that they may get in the way of a handshake agreement, a signature, or just consent, and feelings are best parked at the door on this cycle. Scorpio. Well, your chart suggests this week that independence and freedom matter far more than commitment and permanence and longevity in a partnership. Of course, you can have it all at once if you're lucky enough, but this is one of those weeks when you shouldn't really be looking at partnerships unless you actually want independence and freedom built in. And that applies to the other person too. In fact, for some of you, between now and July, it is quite clear that things are going to have to radically change or even come to a halt unless there is space guaranteed for you, her, or him. These are the rules with Uranus in Taurus, and this is commonly about marriage, a de facto relationship, dating, but it can also extend to a professional partnership or a platonic duet. Until the second half of 2025, you are in a position to make changes and get changes as well. And if something breaks through this week, it will be because you are not free enough. Uranus in Taurus is pretty notorious in astrology. It's been with you since 2018, and you can probably see a pattern now looking back over your shoulder. If there is not enough space or oxygen within the partnership or around it, then there may be a wild card or the rug may be pulled in order for things to change. If you're thinking about professional partnership or working partnership, that applies just as much as a marriage. But be you single or with someone, what you can also pick up this week is that rejection sets you free. Rejecting somebody liberates you, and being rejected also liberates you in a funny kind of way. Saying no to him or her, or hearing a big no from him or her, does change the agenda, but it also brings freedom and space into your lives because your options are now open. You are used to this by now, as you have been living with this cycle since 2018, as I mentioned. In fact, last year, your world turned upside down with a partner or an ex-partner, be they personal or professional. And sometimes, of course, the person you are with becomes the other side, the opposition. Now you are far more independent, which is a good thing. So this week you can look back and take stock and make new decisions, but also perhaps plan the end of something or the start of something by July. That is when Uranus leaves Taurus and you are into a different chapter. Sagittarius. Mars going backwards and forwards results in a loop with finance or property, possessions, charity, or business. Mars retrograde in the 8th house of your chart in the sign of Cancer until April 18 will deliver some of the most important issues of the year backwards. Something in motion but not concluded is the story of the week. It will pay in every way to be aware of the need to balance your diary with the reality of the astrology calendar, which shows a circuit or a loop. However, what is stuck or going around in circles is part of a bigger solution or a huge opportunity with money or property after June 10. On that day, Jupiter, your ruler, goes into Cancer, the same zone of your chart. So this is an unusual cycle. First of all, you're going back and forth, and then you have really big solutions and options after June 10. Now, Mars will show up as heat behind action. Mars can show up as conflict. And here he is stuck in the sign of property and banking, possessions too. And not just yours, these typically involve partners or family members. So, for example, a will or a mortgage. But again, it's backwards and forwards. So what you're doing this week is retreating and reversing, but also rehearsing. Yet it all goes forward from April 18, when Mars finally is out of this loop, and then the situation will provide the raw material for something really big after June 10. In fact, June may already be in your diary. Capricorn. There will be quite a lot of power in the financial or property space for you now, with Pluto in Aquarius, and most of it is about a financial, shares, charity, business or property question, which is on your mind in terms of control. Do you feel in control or controlled? We are now going deeply into the new Pluto cycle. Meanwhile, the Mars cycle in Leo, in your 8th house, is bringing up reversals and rehearsals with stop, start, and delays. Yet this ends on June 17. Until then, though, particularly this week, put re in front of any word with the money, the property, and so on, and you're pretty close to what's going on. Always read the fine print on paperwork on this cycle and understand that this cycle is about using your willpower to gain empowerment with, for example, your divorce settlement, your inheritance, redundancy payout, tax bill, or bank loan. The short cycle is Mars retrograde in Leo, and the long cycle is Pluto in Aquarius. I'll talk more about Pluto now and how you get the upper hand when you use your self-control and willpower. Basically, this planet was found in 1930, and this is now the planet behind a massive cycle in the finance zone of your chart. Pushing back and holding your own were the only tactics to have in the 30s when Pluto was discovered. Inner strength meant those who had it right into the 1940s literally won the war. Those who gave up or gave in were disempowered on every level. And there's a big message here now about your money and your property. The issue is feeling that you are psychologically and spiritually your own master or mistress. So that means self-control and willpower this week being the gateway. Aquarius. Renovation or relocation is very likely between now and July. And this week you'll be laying the groundwork for redecoration, renovations, a family or household reshuffle, or even a major move. It's an excellent time to research the place and space that you have in mind, the housing market, or what others do. This is about family and household, but also house, apartment, or garden, your town and country. The cycle ends in July, and it's the Uranus in Taurus cycle, which you've had since 2018. Every time you make a change with the home front, or at least you accept one, you gain more freedom, and you've found that out by now. Sometimes the issue is your own town or country and not your actual home. So it may be that all the upheaval, the change and the freedom is centered on that instead. This week you realise that you have until July to get things finished, and then you will have had your final Independence Day. Uranus in Taurus is independence from a home or independence through a home, and it's the same with a family or household. Even though you've already done a lot of changing, there is one more big leap to come. And this week will enable you to see where you are not free and where others are not free either. It may be a question about how small or big the apartment is. It may be a wider issue about your state or your county. There may be a question here about a family member or a household member. But Uranus will have its way, one way or another, and it pays on this cycle to be conscious of what needs to change rather than ignoring it, because if you ignore it, change seems to break through anyway. Pisces. Mars retrograde in Leo is rolling, reversing, and encourages rehearsal with work, unpaid work, or study. So this week is about researching a future job, analysing the consequences of retiring or resigning, or just doing your homework on a boss, client, colleague, or professional competitor. And yet it's all back to front. You are, in many ways, in a holding pattern. You may as well make it a useful holding pattern, though, by finding out what you need to know. Mars retrograde is backwards action. If you are a student, a full-time home duties person, retired, a carer, or unemployed, then this unusual cycle will affect your goals and your roles. In fact, this cycle has been all over the place for you for quite a long time. It's not only about your workload, it's also about your well-being. Mars went into Leo back on November 5 last year, and then he disappeared on January 7. So you had quite a few weeks of forward momentum and then absolutely nothing. And that's where you are this week, looking back over your shoulder, but also towards the future. On April 19, the cycle comes back into life and you can get going again with what or who vanished. And by June 17, Pisces, you can call this done and dusted. You must feel as if a work matter has gone west or as if a health matter has gone off the radar. Whatever it was, it would have started with quite a lot of heat after November 5, then went right off the screen as the year began. Yet this will be back in your life from April 19, as I've mentioned, no matter if you're waiting for surgery or waiting to move on a course or a plan. Right now, you're treading water this week while something or someone has apparently gone, but not so. This whole thing will be back around Easter. So this is a very good week for you to do your homework and do your research and figure out where you'd like to go from that point forward. Thanks for listening. Remember, the Astrology Show on Substack also offers you a free daily horoscope to your inbox, and I'll catch up with you next week.